go over some logistics and pass it over to Tom and you.
I'm told that the numbers I gave you, that you wouldn't right, that doesn't sound like that's true. Okay, well, yeah, bye-bye.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Barbara. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there as well. We are going to give just a few minutes while people continue to log on, and but we will get started very shortly here. Please feel free to type your name, maybe where you're from, in the chat box. We love to see what parts of the state are represented, so consider doing that. Oh, wonderful. Okay, why don't I go ahead and go through some of the logistics that we have this morning before we get started. I want to say good morning and welcome again to the Florida Friendly Landscaping Professional Webinar Series. Today's webinar is New Year, New Plants. Learn about the new plant releases with Dr. John Beuttenmuller. Today, he will review cultivar development process and also discuss recent UF-IFAS cultivar releases and their benefits and limitations as well. This webinar is approved for 1 FNGLA, FFLCP, DBPR for landscape architecture, and FDAC CEU. There is a $10 administration fee to receive your certificate of continuing education, and I'll put that in the chat box once we get started. Otherwise, the webinar is free. It's only if you want CEUs that you have to pay for a $10 fee. And you will receive that certificate of completion by Friday of this week. We like to give people an extra day or so that they can sign up for the CEU if they would like it. So you will get those certificates till probably Friday. And this is part of a monthly webinar series. The next webinar will be bringing in the butterflies, designing butterfly and pollinator gardens with Dr. Jarrett Daniels. And then another announcement I'd like to make this morning is that we have another webinar series that we're offering this year. It will be the second Thursday of the month. So that first week of the month, or the second week of the month is busy for us around here, and we hope you'll join us. This webinar series is a green stormwater infrastructure webinar series. These webinars cover topics ranging from funding to design to maintenance ordinance compliance, and more. We're kicking that webinar series off on Thursday with an introduction to green stormwater with Dr. Jarrett Daniels. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at different things. It's not with Dr. Jarrett Daniels. That's the butterfly one. For the GSI webinar series, we'll have representatives from Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, UF-IFAS, and also Ferguson. So it'll be a really diverse lineup. We're really looking forward to that. And as you may have noticed, you've been muted. Your microphones have been muted. So please put your questions in the chat box. We'll take them at the end of the presentation. And also you'll see a survey invitation pop up. So please take a moment to fill this out, as it really helps us determine what educational programs to offer in the future. And now I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Dr. John Beuttenmuller is the Executive Director of Florida Foundation Seed Producers, a Florida nonprofit corporation and direct support organization of the University of Florida. As Executive Director of FFSP, John oversees FFSP's 650-acre foundation seed stock farm and seed processing facilities in Marianna, Florida, as well as technology transfer and licensing of new cultivar developed and released by UF-IFAS plant breeders in more than 40 different crop species. Prior to his hiring as Executive Director of FFSP in 2010, John served as SSFSP's Intellectual Property and Licensing Director. John is a native Floridian and is proud to be a graduate of the University of Florida as well. Go Gators. Today, John will be talking about a topic I'm certainly excited about. He will be telling us all about some new plant releases, and it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to John Beuttenmuller.
Great, thank you, Claire. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Well, welcome everybody here this morning. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here today. I do want to give a bit of a background just to start to just lay out the framework of our organization. In 1943, the Florida Crop Improvement Association was founded, and that organization was renamed to Florida Foundation Seed Producers in 1957. And then in 1979, the organization became a direct support organization of the University of Florida. There are many direct support organizations of the university, the Alumni Association, the UF Foundation, for example, that manages all the endowed funds for the university, the University of Florida Research Foundation, Athletic Association, and what they are separate nonprofit corporations that exist to benefit the University of Florida. And in our case, it's around commercialization and increase of new varieties from the plant breeding programs within UF-IFAS. Our purpose, this slide's pretty wordy here, but just want to hit some highlights. Is one, to make available nursery and seed stock of the best known varieties to growers and producers in Florida. Naturally, in doing so, we cooperate directly with the Florida Agricultural Experiment Station and all of the researchers, whether they're plant breeders or other researchers that are working on other aspects relative to crop improvement, and to increase releases and new varieties to make them available to industry. And then number 3 and 4 are really just relative to our function as a DSO to work in cooperation with the University of Florida and to benefit the university. In terms of our organizational structure, we have governed by a board of directors consisting of 13 members. 9 of the 13 board seats are held by industry representatives that are elected from our membership. And then the other 4 seats, 1 seat is held by the Dean for Research of UF-IFAS, the Dean for Extension of UF-IFAS, an appointee of the president of the university, and then an appointee of the University of Florida Board of Trustees. A lot of people hear our name, Florida Foundation Seed, and by virtue of us being a nonprofit, they think that we're a charitable foundation. But actually, the foundation part of our name refers to Foundation Seed, and Foundation Seed is developed or is produced from breeder seed. So when a breeder is working to release a new variety, specifically here in sexually reproduced seed crops, they increase what's called breeder seed, and in anticipation of release. That breeder seed is planted to produce foundation seed, and the foundation seed is grown by our organization and through contract growers, and then it's harvested, processed, cleaned, and treated and packaged at our facilities in Marianna, which are adjacent to the North Florida Research and Education Center in Marianna. In terms of production of certified seed, this is all governed under the Association of Official Seed Certifying Agencies, or AOSCA. So you can see here, breeder seed, the subsequent generation is foundation. Foundation seed is then planted to produce registered seed, and then registered seed is planted to produce certified seed. And the intent and purpose of seed certification is to ensure genetic purity and quality seed through successive generations of seed production. In the states of Florida and Alabama, we are managed under the Southern Seed Certification Association, or SSCA, and SSCA is the official seed certifying agency for both the state of Florida and the state of Alabama. It's really two main functions to our operations today, as Claire mentioned, the production of foundation seed stock, and then technology transfer of intellectual property of new varieties from UF-IFAS plant breeding programs. So our team works on trial and testing agreements, intellectual property protection and patenting, license negotiation, and management. The UF intellectual property policy is unique in that there are two different entities that work in technology commercialization. As I mentioned, for plant germplasm and cultivars, rights in those inventions are assigned and managed by our organization. And then for all other inventions with the university, you think Centricon and all other patented inventions are licensed through UF Innovate, a different office at the University of Florida. And by and large, UF is widely recognized for its success in licensing impactful inventions and discoveries for the benefit of the public. One thing that's very unique on with respect to the IP policy, outside of the fact that there's two different entities that manage intellectual property, is the distribution of royalties. So for cultivars and germplasm, 70% of royalties that are returned through licensing are reinvested back into the Cultivar Development Research Support Program, and that is the Developing Breeders Research Support Program, or the not research support program, but the Developing Breeders Research Program. 20% is a personal incentive to inventors and cooperating scientists, and then 10% is retained by FFSP. This unique distribution policy is the most aggressive reinvestment of royalties out of any land grant institution. And you will see, I think, through when I get into talking about new releases here today, this is the reason why plant breeding is successful and growing at the University of Florida. When you look around at other states, public funding for plant breeding has declined, but I would say that plant breeding is thriving and growing at the University of Florida, and it is a very exciting time. But through this plant breeding and licensing process and collecting of royalties through licensing, we're able to continue this somewhat virtuous cycle of the development of new varieties. And so these royalties go to support the programs. It's provided resources to hire new plant breeding faculty focused on either existing crops or potential new crops for Florida. It supports your early career faculty as new programs are getting started. It's been a catalyst to the creation of the new PhD degree program in plant breeding that was launched, I believe, 2 years ago. And it allows for exploration of new crops, new varieties in Florida. Many of you may be aware of the geographical diversity of the plant breeding programs within UF, but currently there's 31 faculty plant breeders strategically located throughout the state of Florida. Oftentimes, breeding programs are located where the particular crops that they're working on are of particular importance. A very diverse breeding group. Plant breeders are currently working to improve more than 50 different crops across the university. And everybody knows, obviously as well, that Florida's agriculture is very diverse. And there is a need for plant improvement in the diversity of different species that are of importance to the state of Florida. Plant breeding program is also very productive. Obviously, teaching, research, and extension. On the teaching side, more than 60 plant breeders have trained within the UF plant breeding program in the last 10 years and generally have excellent job placement, whether that be in academia or industry. 259 new varieties have been released from the plant breeding programs over the past 10 years. And over that same period, we have executed 1,544 license agreements to new plant varieties. So moving into recent releases, I have a few slides on different areas, but ornamentals and edible crops, some turf grass, and then a little bit on fruit and vegetable crops. And I have excluded agronomic row crops and forages here today, but those are certainly productive programs as well. And I would also say this isn't an exhaustive list of all the new releases. And there are some releases in here that may not be new, but I'm presenting because they're either relatively new or there's new promotional programs or efforts around those particular varieties. So starting off with ornamentals, the Coleus breeding program, many of you may be familiar under the direction of Dr. David Clark, has been incredibly successful. The program is really focused on Coleus varieties that do well in both sun and shade and have late flowering. Many may see Coleus that is grown and looks great early on, and then around midsummer it starts bolting and producing seed. And when the plant uses energy for seed production, oftentimes the foliage quality on Coleus begins to decline. So you'll see plants starting to look faded, the colors fading, and just generally starting to look somewhat unthrifty. And so the Coleus breeding program is a vegetative program and focused on late flowering. So with our very warm summers and long day length, those types of conditions would oftentimes cause a Coleus to flower, but the focus has been on performance in the landscape, both sun and shade and late flowering. This first variety here, Stained Glassworks Magnificent Mile, is a very vigorous plant with upright and spreading growth habit. You can see from the picture here, it has very large leaves for Coleus with contrasting pink centers. burnt orange midsections, and lime green leaf margins. This variety has been licensed and is available through Doom and Orange. Next variety is Main Street Bourbon Street. You can see a little bit of a different leaf architecture here on this variety. Once again, a vigorous plant with a spreading form and upright growth habit that grows almost twice as wide as it is tall. Highly lobed reddish purple leaves with a distinct lime green margin that is very uniform across the plant. This variety as well is licensed and available through Doom and Orange. Next variety, Main Street Young Street, is a very kind of a dark red color leaf with accents of Kelly green present in younger leaves and the leaves that understory leaves that are somewhat shaded. It's a vigorous and upright plant with a well-branched and spreading habit. Once again, this one is available through Doom and Orange. The next variety is Main Street Venice Boulevard. Very bright yellow leaves with predominant magenta veins in a netted pattern across the leaf. It's a vigorous and upright plant with spreading growth habit. This as well is licensed and available through Doom and Orange. Next variety is Main Street Orchard Road. You can see the pink on these leaves really pop out in contrast with the deep purple with a lime green margin around the edge of the leaf. It's a standard size coleus with highly branched. It's highly branched and an upright spreading growth habit. This as well is available through Doom and Orange. This one, personal favorite of mine, just really pops out to me, is really unique, called Stained Glassworks Palisade. A very vigorous plant with a distinctly uniform spreading habit, once again wider than it is tall. The leaves are lance-shaped and uniformly lime green colored, with a cream-colored spots randomly scattered in the center of the leaf. This as well is licensed and available through Doom and Orange. The next variety, next coleus, is Talavera Moondust. Really unique. This is the picture here shows a close-up of the leaf, and you can see these chartreuse spots that kind of speckle the leaves. But it's a uniformly red leaf with these spots, and a very vigorous growing and spreading form with upright growth habit. This is a new introduction from Syngenta Flowers. It's been licensed to Syngenta Flowers and is available through Syngenta Flowers. The next variety is Talavera Sienna. This is a upright, well-branched plant with a spreading habit. Bright orange leaf with prominent chartreuse highlights around the leaf margins. This variety as well is licensed and available through Syngenta Flowers. No, the picture here didn't update. Let me see. Well, I'll have to change that and before I send out my slides. But the Talavera pink tricolor, ignore the photo here, but it's a standard size, highly branched plant with an upright spreading growth habit. Large leaves that are predominantly deep purple with contrasting pink centers and well-defined lime green margins. The Talavera pink tricolor is licensed to Syngenta Flowers, and once again, it's that's not the right picture there on that slide. I'll get that updated. The next variety, Talavera Burgundy Lime, coleus, once again vigorous and upright with a bit well-branched and spreading habit. Very deep maroon leaves with a prominent chartreuse highlight between the leaf veins and a netted pattern around the leaf margin. This is licensed and available to Syngenta Flowers. The next, I believe, final coleus variety, hopefully nobody's getting tired of coleus, but the program has been incredibly productive. And if you look just over the past decade with the genetic progress that's been made in this program, if you looked at pictures from 10 years ago, for example, and compared them to some of these new varieties, the plants, whether it be colors or growth habit, are just phenomenal and have done really, really well. And coleus is a great plant. It grows well. It doesn't require much maintenance. And as Dr. Clark likes to say, they like to breed plants that are hard to kill. They're resilient and they do well. So this variety, Color Blaze Mini Me Watermelon, is unique. I think when you compare it to all the other previous coleus that I've presented on here today, it's very highly branched, so you can see it kind of almost looks frizzy, with a vigorous and spreading habit. Once again, growing more horizontal than vertical, which allows this plant to fill space with very vibrant colors very quickly. So bicolored maroon and chartreuse foliage, highlighted with pink spots, and those colors remain stable in both sun and shade. This variety is licensed and available through proven winners. Here are just some resources for coleus. These slides will be shared, so I don't think you need to scramble to write these links down, but just some resources on coleus and some more information about the coleus breeding program. Once again, that program is under the direction of Dr. David Clark in the Environmental Horticulture Department based in Gainesville. Switching gears to caladiums, a couple new releases of caladiums. Firefly caladium is a wide leaf, wide white lance, has wide white lance leaves. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. Very good leaf health and good sunburn tolerance, which lends this variety to perform well in both sun and shade. Currently, this variety is licensed and available through Florida Boys Caladiums here in Florida. Another caladium variety, Spicy Lizard. It's a lance leaf caladium with thick green main veins, multiple burgundy spots on the leaves, once again with excellent sunburn tolerance. And this variety has particularly strong resistance to leaf spot. This variety is well suited for use in the landscape, and once again currently available, licensed to Florida Boys Caladiums. Here are some resources for the caladium program under the direction of Dr. Zanao Dang in the Environmental Horticulture Department based at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center in Florida. These three varieties, once again, while not new releases over the past year or two, are relatively new and have done extremely well in their first couple of years on the market. Many of you may know that Lantana has the ability to hybridize with native lantana and poses an invasion risk here in Florida. And the lantana program has been working on developing sterile lantana cultivars that do not produce viable seed or pollen. And so the concern of cross-pollination or hybridization is not there, and so they are, I would say, particularly Florida friendly in that certainly an attempt to turn the tide in the invasive risk that lantana poses. But this variety, Bloomify Red, is very nice ball-shaped habit plant, medium vigorous, and you can see here in the potted plant that's shown, just loaded with beautiful flowers. This is licensed to Ball Horticulture and available through Ball. The second lantana variety in this Bloomify series is Bloomify Rose. Once again, a nice ball-shaped habit, medium vigorous, just different flower colors here, and once again, sterile in that it does not produce viable seed or pollen. This variety as well is available through Ball Horticulture. The third and final lantana variety is the Luscious Royal Red Zone. It's red flowers with the dark green foliage, very heat tolerant, and once again, sterile in that it does not produce viable seed or pollen. This is licensed to proven winners. Here are some resources on lantana within UF-IFAS, and the lantana program is under the direction of Dr. Zanao Deng, who also manages the caladium breeding program at GCREC. Switching to edibles, everybody may be familiar, but Dr. David Clark started a basil breeding program in addition to his coleus breeding effort. And Pesto Besto is the first seeded basil variety out of his basil breeding program. It's very large and vigorous plant, and it produces a high yield of usable, deliciously aromatic leaves. The big focus in the basil breeding program has been on breeding resistance to basil downy mildew, which has become a big challenge in basil production. And this variety, as I mentioned, is the first seeded basil cultivar from this program with this downy mildew resistance. And this variety is licensed and available through proven winners. The second basil variety, and this was the first release from the program, Amazel basil, is a vegetative basil cultivar. So remember, Pesto Besto is seeded, where Amazel is vegetative. It's a vigorous plant that is seed sterile. As a result of the seed sterility, it produces more leaves and shoots. And this has excellent resistance to basil downy mildew. To proven winners. Here is some resources on basil, and as I mentioned, the program under the direction of Dr. David Clark in Gainesville. Switching to turfgrass, there's two turfgrass varieties I have in the slides today. These aren't releases from over the past year, but as many of you may know, it takes time to get turfgrass into production on sod farms throughout the state. And Citra Blue is the new St. Augustine grass release from the University of Florida. It has a very deep blue-green color. You can see here, I don't know how the color is showing on the screen, but the picture on the right, you can see Citra Blue in the forefront. And you can see that in comparison to other checks around that that plot there, and you can see its natural deep blue-green color, and it achieves that color genetically. It's not that particular plot was fertilized more or anything like that. It's really pops out and attractive when you have it side by side with, say, a cultivar like Floratam. But Citra Blue has very good shade tolerance, and has less vertical growth than Floratam. You can see in the picture on the left with Citra Blue on the right, and how it's certainly not as tall as the blades of Floratam on the left. So certainly reduced mowing. This variety is licensed to the turfgrass producers of Florida and was a product of a sponsored research program with the turfgrass producers of Florida and Sod Solutions. The other turfgrass variety is a zoysia grass cultivar, Citrusoi. Citrusoi is finer textured. The blade is not as wide as many commercial zoysia varieties in the market. And part of that is that you can see in the chart on the right, the zoysia grass or zoysia japonica. When you look at Empire, Palisades, and Icon, 3 commercial varieties, you can see the leaf width there. And then Citrusoi, which is a hybrid of Zoysia matrella and Zoysia japonica. So you have that intermediate texture of the leaf blade. Citrusoi was particularly selected for drought response and large patch tolerance of fungal disease that can be quite problematic in zoysia grass. Citrusoi is licensed to Sod Solutions and the turfgrass producers of Florida. Here are here's a resource for turfgrass, and the turf program is managed under the direction of Dr. Kevin Kenworthy in the Department of Agronomy in Gainesville. Switching to fruit and vegetables, starting with blueberry. Hello Darlin was a blueberry variety that was selected for its suitability in more of a home landscape as opposed to commercial fruit production. But this variety is an early blooming plant with compact, dense foliage that has a nice ornamental characteristic in the fall, and that the leaves turn a dark red. This variety is licensed to PDSI and is part of the Southern Living plant collection. Another new blueberry variety is Sentinel, and this variety is intended more for the commercial market, but a very vigorous early season variety with high yields, anywhere from 8 to 16 pounds of fruit per plant. And this variety really is, I would say, I-4 corridor north, but it's well adapted to north central Florida and central Florida as well. And this variety has been licensed to several blueberry nurseries, and the list of those nurseries will be available on our website. Here are some resources for blueberry, then Euophyphus, and the blueberry program is led by Dr. Patricio Munoz in Horticultural Sciences based in Gainesville. Strawberry, Florida Medallion is one of the newest releases from the program. Early yielding variety with very uniform conical fruit shape, very consistent in its fruit shape. Has very even color across the fruit and is firm. Another hallmark of Florida Medallion is its flavor. Its flavor is very similar to or better than the Sweet Sensation Florida 127. That was a release that was brought forward really on its exceptional flavor. And so this variety is at least there and perhaps slightly better. than Sweet Sensation. And if you look within the strawberry breeding program, once again, over kind of the past 10 years, there's been great strides, both in yield, disease resistance, and flavor. This variety has been licensed to the Florida Strawberry Patent Service Corporation, which is a sister organization of the Florida Strawberry Growers Association. In nursery, a list of nurseries is available on their website, floridastrawberry.org. Another relatively new release from the strawberry program is Florida Brilliance. Very high early yields when grown in Florida. In fact, higher than any previous release from the UF strawberry breeding program. So very attractive fruit with good flavor, and has done really well over the past several seasons. Once again, this variety is licensed to the Florida Strawberry Patent Service Corporation. The next kind of series of varieties, we have two varieties now under this Florida Pearl brand. Many of you may have seen this recently in supermarkets. It's sold under a few different labels, the Pinkaboo label with Wish Farms, the Berry de Blanc with Aston Farms, and it's now starting to make its way into smaller markets and specialty markets, but also available through large supermarket chains. Actually, I was in Publix yesterday evening and saw some of these white strawberries in a heart-shaped package with red and white strawberries. Kind of a unique contrast and taking advantage of the Valentine's Day market. But the Florida Pearl series, they're white fruited strawberries. Both varieties have a hint of a pineapple aroma. The fruit is somewhat soft, or sorry, the fruit has a soft pink blush when it ripens, and different from a red strawberry variety. When a red strawberry variety is ripe, its color is fully red. When this is ripe, it stays ripe, but the achenes or the seeds turn red, and you can see this blush is developed over the exterior of the fruit. So very unique product, and certainly we're seeing more of it out there in the market this season than we have in previous. This variety as well is licensed to the Florida Strawberry Patent Service Corporation. Here are the some resources for the Florida Strawberry Breeding Program, and the researcher focused in strawberry, Dr. Vance Whitaker, Hort Science based at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center, and Dr. Song-Hee Lee at the Research and Education Center as well. Switching to tomatoes, two more home garden varieties, Garden Gem and Garden Treasure. This is a photo of Garden Gem. It's a semi-determinate tomato variety. Produces snack-sized tomatoes with true heirloom taste. Both Garden Gem and Garden Treasure were developed using commercial parent lines and combining those with heirloom lines to try to bring along some of the flavor and volatiles and heirlooms that may be missing in tomatoes today. This variety is licensed to Proven Winners, and Garden Treasures licensed to Proven Winners as well. This is a slicer type tomato, and is indeterminate. And once again, same breeding objective here is focused on flavor. Many are probably aware with of Tasty Lee. This certainly isn't a new variety, but another high flavor tomato variety that's available in the supermarket, but for the home garden market, and seed is available, and is been a great hit, great success. It has very attractive deep red internal color, with high lycopene as a vine ripe tomato. This variety has been licensed to Bijou Seeds. Here are some resources for tomato breeding at UF, and the tomato breeding programs under the direction of Dr. Sam Hutton, currently in the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center. The two Garden Gem and Garden Treasures were releases from Dr. Harry Klee's program. Dr. Klee has recently retired, and so the active breeder in tomato right now is Dr. Sam Hutton. Switching to citrus, hopefully some of on the call here this morning have perhaps heard some news of the new UF-IFAS effort to promote dooryard citrus or home citrus. Many people have been challenged in growing citrus in the dooryard due to citrus greening predominantly, but more obviously a lot has been learned about living with HLB or citrus greening in the Florida environment over the past 15 years. This new effort is focused on developing resources, whether that be FAQs, instructional videos, demonstrations, things of that nature, to communicate to the industry, one, what's been learned, and what can be done to more successfully grow citrus in the dooryard or in the home landscape. And this new website has been launched here at the bottom. But if you just Google the UF-IFAS home citrus, you can visit this site and learn more. But two varieties that have been are kind of the initial target for this dooryard program are Sugar Bell, which has shown great performance even in the face of citrus greening or HLB. It's not resistant to HLB by any means, but it is less susceptible than other varieties. It's a very high flavor mandarin that ripens in November and December. And when grown in isolation or without cross-pollination, it's very low seeded, low to no seeds without cross-pollination, but with cross-pollination, it will produce seed. This variety is licensed to the New Varieties Development Management Corporation, and nursery sources for consumers in the dooryard market is on that home citrus website that I mentioned on the previous slide. Another variety that has been included in this dooryard push is OLL4, which is a round orange with excellent internal and external color. Has excellent juice color and maintains its quality into the summer. And licensed nurseries for this variety are available on our website, ffsp.net. Two new citrus, so some of you may be familiar with finger limes, but it's part of the citrus family. Two new varieties from Dr. Manjul Dutt's breeding program at CREC. The first one shown here is UF Sun Lime. It's a finger lime hybrid that produces cylindrical fruit that averages about 3 inches in length. Produces high amounts of anthocyanins both in the juice vesicles and the skin of the fruit. And currently this variety is licensed to Bright Leaf Citrus Nursery, but we will be bringing additional Florida citrus nurseries on as their interest grows and they received more demand for this variety. But this is actually the first finger lime released from University of Florida. Along UF Sun Lime and UF Red Lime were released together, but the first two finger lime releases from UF. This is UF Red Lime. It's a narrow fruit and with oblong in shape, slightly tapered at both ends, with a little bit longer length than Sun Lime, length ranging from 3.5 to 5 inches. Once again, it produces high amounts of anthocyanins in both the juice vesicles and skin. And this is currently licensed to Brightleaf Citrus Nursery. One thing to note, finger lime is very tolerant of HLB or citrus greening. So definitely something that could be grown successfully here in Florida, even in despite HLB pressure. Here are some resources for citrus and the 4 plant breeding faculty working in citrus breeding: Jose Chaparro in Gainesville, Manuel Dudd at Lake Alfred, Fred Gemitter at Lake Alfred, and Dr. Jude Grosser at Lake Alfred. Looking forward, what's new and what's next? It's always exciting to see what may be coming down the pipeline. About 10 years ago, Dr. Zanao Deng started a blackberry breeding program, and I anticipate over the next few years we'll have our first release out of that program. Many of you are familiar or aware that plant breeding is a long-term research project, and so when a program started, it takes several years to acquire germplasm and to begin to make crosses and selection. And so we anticipate some blackberry releases in the near future. A raspberry breeding program was started last year by Dr. Zanao Deng at the Gulf Coast Research and Education Center as well. We have Dr. Herman Sandoya working in lettuce, both for field-grown lettuce and then lettuce for protected or controlled environment ag. Some new ornamental breeding efforts by Dr. Alfred Huo at the Mid-Florida Research and Education Center in Apopka. Dr. Huo has been working on breeding heat tolerance in a lot of annual bedding plants that generally perform well in northern climates, but don't have the heat tolerance to perform well here in the Southeast. And so his focus, one of his focuses, is on improving heat tolerance. And Dr. Xingbo Wu, a new faculty hire in ornamental plant breeding at the Tropical Research and Education Center. What's coming? Another thing coming is peppers. Dr. Bala Rathanasabapathy, or Saba for short, based in Gainesville. Dr. Marcio Resende in sweet corn. Dr. Jeffrey Miru and Dr. In a tropical fruit breeding program at Trek. That program was previously under the direction of Dr. Alan Chambers. He's just left UF, unfortunately, but that breeding position will be hopefully refilled here in the short term. Some of you may be familiar with the Seed It program, but the Seed It program was an internal grant or funding opportunity within UF IFAS, focusing on developing integrated teams to alleviate choke points in the development of emerging enterprises in Florida. The first round is concluded. These are, I just have listed the projects relative to new plant breeding opportunities or new crops for Florida. Florida malting barley was explored. Breeding new values for leafy vegetables in protected agriculture, using lettuce as a model, specialty pumpkins, sweet potato, superfoods, ginger, turmeric, and camellia tea, Australian finger lime, and a project on blackberries. So as I mentioned, these projects, and then one more on vanilla. These projects have concluded in the first stage, and we were delighted to learn that the Dean for Research Office and the Dean for Extension Office have continued this program, and we're now into round 2. And just a few weeks ago, the funded projects were announced for round 2. One of them is exploring the development of an elderberry industry in Florida. Another project focused on Florida finger limes. Another project on breeding for climate smart coffee cultivars. So imagine having a cup of Florida grown, Florida roasted coffee in the morning. That's one that has, I think, a lot of people very excited, exploring the potential for coffee production here in the state. Another program focused on olives, and one on passion fruit. Another on cold hardy citrus, scion, and rootstock evaluation in North Florida. And a new project on vanilla production that is under the direction currently of Dr. Xingbo Wu. Another plug is for the our plant breeding endowment. This endowment at the university was established by our organization to support applied breeding research at UF-IFAS, to continue to support these breeding efforts and to ensure long-term success of plant breeding at UF-IFAS, whether that be existing programs or the creation of new programs and opportunities. For example, the research grant was given out last year to Dr. Zinaudang for him to begin to embark on the exploration of raspberries and breeding raspberries for Florida. That concludes my talk. I think I have 10:58 here. But I know we didn't get started quite on time, but I will be glad to stay as long as you would like me to answer any questions that you may have.
John, thank you
Contact
so much.
information's on the slide as well, so feel free to email, reach out if you do have questions and either there's not enough time or you think of something later.
John, thank you so much. That was amazing information. I do have a couple of questions that the folks in the audience have asked. Number one, somebody wants to know if can coleus survive winters in Gainesville, Florida?
It depends how cold it gets. I actually had a coleus planted in my backyard in Gainesville, and it got nipped pretty bad this winter. But sometimes you'll see a plant die back, but it doesn't get all the way down to the roots. You'll see a new sprout coming up in the spring, but I would say it's definitely not cold hardy. It just depends on what kind of winter we have.
Yeah, one of the oftentimes I lose mine in the wintertime. Just they often don't come back. Occasionally I get a surprise and they do, like your experience. One thing that trick that I've always done is, if I know cold weather's on its way, I'll take some cuttings, and they'll root really well even in water, so that they're pretty easy to root. And so that is something that if you want to extend your plants a little longer, that's a good little trick for folks. Another question is, do the lantana cultivars that you showed have nectar?
That is a good question, and unfortunately, I do not know the answer. I believe that they do. I just believe that the pollen that they produce, it's just not viable. It when that pollen is brought to another plant, it just doesn't. It's non-viable pollen. But I can, if we have who answered that question, I can follow up and give a more definitive answer on that.
Yeah, and the one other question that I have is they wanted to see if you could go back to the Basil page that had the link for more information. Is there any way you could get back there?
There we are.
Fantastic. So many cool new resources and new plants coming. I'm pretty excited about where we're going with some of these new crops like the finger limes, and you know, it's I'll be interested. Do you have any idea? I'm asking for my own particular use, how cold hardy the finger limes are?
That's a good question. I don't think they're exploring to determine their northern limit of adaptation. I will
Okay.
say that.
But always keep it in the container and bring
That's
it
right.
in.
Yeah.
Okay, because those are pretty fascinating, unique fruits, and I'm not sure even, I've never tried them, so I don't quite even know how to eat them, but it'd be fun to
Yeah, it's
learn.
interesting. There's a lot of interest in finger limes in food service and in culinary markets as well. You know, you'll see finger limes used as a really unique garnish, and other things. So definitely something that has the foodies excited.
I bet. John, thank you so much for all the great information. This was enlightening. I look forward to seeing all these new releases, and you've got my appetite whetted for seeing where the research goes. I would like to invite everybody to make sure that you tune in next month, March 14th. We have Dr. Jarrett Daniels. He's going to be talking about designing butterfly and pollinator gardens. And you should receive a link to a survey, or a survey should pop up. Please take the time to fill that out. It'll help us provide the best possible webinars for your interest, and it helps us do better each and every month. So thank you so much, John. Thank you again. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to following your progress.
My pleasure. Thank you all so much, and have a great day.